Okay, I think while things are still drying, I'm going to just have a fun experimentation here, and I'm going to squeeze out 2 colors in, and we will play with all 3 colors, and we will do these swatches slightly different to what we've done before. So it's going to be more of a creative swatch, in the sense that we're not being too strict with kind of trying to put the perfect amount of each color so we get a certain look, etc. But I will go and change my water because this is not clear enough for us to get some interesting colors. It will, you know, it's likely to muddy things up a bit. Okay, so let's carry on having fun. So I already have a mix here, so I might just kind of load my brush a little bit and add some color onto here, and now mix in another color into this color and add it here. So what we're doing is we're creating mixes and swatches like that. The less you touch them, the less you let them be kind of more natural, the better. So in that case, I'm going to add some green. Which is Viridian. And there we go. And then we will refer to the big puddle there. And maybe get some of the quinacridone in here. So these swatches are of course very difficult to write down exactly what you have mixed here, because we're working now with 3 colors, but what in fact it is, so it was 2 pigments here, 2 pigments there, and 1 pigment, so with 5 pigments. It's very difficult to know exactly what's happening here, but it's always nice to experiment. It's more like I find it's like a muscle. When you exercise, your muscle knows what it's doing, but at the point where you stop exercising, you kind of lose it a little bit. Your body needs to adjust to it again when you start exercising after a long break. So same thing with mixing colors. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become, the more interesting mixes you can create, and that is always kind of becoming almost like a second nature. So the more you experiment, in my opinion, the better you will become with these mixes. Let's see what happens if we add a bit of this lovely color into Viridian. So there's some really, really stunning colors here. And I find that this round swatch actually gives you a lovely space to create these swatches in, because you can't fit that into a rectangle. A oval or a rounder shape that doesn't have corners is a more organic, a more natural shape anyhow. So I find that this works really, really well for it. So yeah, this has been my discovery. The oval swatches has been my discovery this year, and I just wanted to share that with you and give you the joy of experimenting with your watercolors or maybe other paints. But this sits very well with watercolors, in particular with watercolors. Also colored pencils, but obviously it's a totally different thing. If you wanted to play around and actually have a shape to stay in, then that's a very kind of, organized way of doing it. So that's that. Now, what we have left is, I wanted to show you what I would do with the info. And then for today, we're also going to do a few swatches with the tube as well. So let me just get my head around things. I'm just going to stick that onto my acrylic block. Okay, so what we have here is 4 spaces. Now I could have put a 5th one in, but then I would have to compromise either on the swatch, on the swatch size, or I'd have to make it even longer, which I didn't want to. So what you have as an option is pigment, light fastness, transparency, granulation. Now some of you might want to do all of them, and there is a way. So you could compromise the name of the pigment and write it somewhere actually on top of the swatch card. I saw this before. Artists would write that like right at the top, and that would be the title of the brand and the title of the, or the name of the watercolor, and then you have all of your info here. But today I'm going to handwrite obviously the exact name of the color. I'm actually thinking I might compromise granulation because I can see what's granulating, what is not. So that's maybe something I would compromise. Yeah, let's do it that way. Let's keep the light fastness. To me, light fastness is superior to granulation purely just by looking at it, because I can't tell if it's light fast or not, but I can tell if it's granulating or not. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So what we will do first is stamp pigment. So pigment will go onto the second one. So we have pigment. Sorry, I have to hug my tripod here to get in there. So that's pigment, and now we're going to do next one, which is light fastness, and then we do transparency at the end. So there we go. I went with the typewriter look because I think that it looks quite cool. It looks contemporary. And finally, let's do transparency. Now transparency will have to really put as far to the side as we can, because let me do it straight. This is not straight. There we go. Because it's a long word, and we have to also get the strip in. So I'm going to start right at the line like that. Hopefully that will give us enough space. What you could do, if you wanted to have granulation instead of transparency, you could just use this black tip here somewhere inside the swatch, and that would basically cover you for the transparency test. Again, you can leave the black strip out altogether and write the transparency info that is provided on the tube or wherever you can find it. But I think sometimes brands tell us one thing, but it ends up being something different. So it's easier to just see it yourself there and then. Granulation they tend to get correct, but transparency I often felt was not. So here we go. Let's see if we can fit that in. Yeah, that works okay. Again, make sure there is something at the back of it so that you can have a flat area, and then you get it more black like this. Yeah, it's a bit difficult for me to get in there at the minute. Okay, so these are our black strips. Okay, again, you can change it up if you wanted to have transparency first, light fastness afterwards. It's totally up to you. Remember, this is why these are build your own clear stamp sets. I want you to do it comfortably, the way you like it, and make it work for your own sort of needs and styles. All right, so now I'm going to write down the names, the pigments and everything, and now we're going to do this strip together with you. I think the camera stopped recording at some point. I'm not sure which point, so I apologize about that. But basically I have just stamped out the pigment, light fastness, transparency with the black strip next to it, and I was saying that you can totally change the arrangement, and you could do this black stamp. If you stamp it out double, like twice, you could fit it into the most part of the width of the swatch. You could do it at the bottom, you could do it at the top. You could do all sorts of things depending how gradual you want it to be. So if you're doing the graduality of the color from top to bottom, then obviously do it on the side somewhere. Just, you know, a couple of things to make it your own and whatever suits you best. So I'm going to go ahead, write down the name of the brands and the watercolor names, and fill in all the information, and we'll do the transparency test together. So keep in mind that light fastness across different brands is rated differently. So Daniel Smith uses, I think, 1 to a 4 scale, 1 being the most light fast. And then with Schmincke, it's a star rating. And if you look into the meaning of it, so 5 stars are extremely light fast. So that would be like the best you can get, and as it goes down you get less stars, so it's, you know, slightly reversed. Now these have 4 stars both, and that means they are good light fastness, so I would say that would be a 2. Okay, so now let's do the transparency, and I'm going to get some clean color over here with plenty of water. And really, I could just go over the entire thing and see how that works. I think I'm going to move some at the word transparency and load more towards the other end. So far it seems quite opaque, but best thing to do is just to let them dry. Now let's start at the other end, as we want to load more here. And then we'll just add a bit more water, and instantly you can see that it's transparent. So I'm adding water at the other end, like that. Okay, and then just let's do the Viridian. So that seems pretty transparent as well. Okay, so that's my way of doing it, but totally you could do it differently. I think it looks nice because you have a wide area in the middle and you have sort of the colors framing the information. But like I said, do it as it suits you best. The other thing I wanted to mention is in the pigments, I think the most I ever come across was a 4 maybe. If I did, I'm not sure, but definitely 3 pigments seems to be kind of what brands would put into a watercolor at most. So you could very comfortably fit in 3 pigments here. If you ever had to fit in 4 pigments, just write them slightly smaller and squeeze them in. But you can see the sizing of the writing is quite comfortable. You don't feel like you have to write really small. So you can write quite long titles as well, and shorter. It really suits well either way. Okay, so for the tube, I wanted to show you something, again, something a little bit more original, something different. So this tube here, which is right there, what you can do, of course, you can use it in sort of like in line, or you could use it on the side of your sketchbook like this, stamp it out. But today I want to show you a slightly different way of doing things. So I would kind of approach this within the color theory, and let's see, I'm going to stamp a couple of them, a few of them rather, next to each other. So let's look at the obvious. So the obvious thing to do would be to create a limited color palette, and of course you could stamp more here to create, say, 4, 5, 6 even colors. Up to 6 I'd say is a limited color palette, but the less the more I see it as a limited color, because then it's no longer limited if you go beyond the point of 6. So let's start with this one here, which we had stamped out. They look nicer when you kind of keep them as a trio together, but you can also change around the shapes. So I would, for instance, if I wanted to create this artwork here and I wanted to have a limited color palette, which I quite like, what I would do is simply go ahead and swatch these out like so. Again, it gives you enough space here to be a bit more artsy, and you could color in the cup as well, just to not have it white, and add a bit more color or water on one end so that you have a bit of a difference in strength. And then you could also leave a bit of white, which makes it look like a lovely sketchy intention. So again, I'm going to put a bit more on one side and then just touch a bit of water. Like so. And like I said before, you can write the title and the brand inside the tube or underneath it or next to it, whichever way suits you. So that would be your limited color palette, and you could remember that you really liked using those colors for your next project. So what you can also do is use your color wheel and the whole color theory. Now we could, for instance, try and create a complementary color palette. So complementary would be colors that are opposite each other. So if we have red orange, which this would sit within that color, red orange or an orange, let's see what we get. So we're going to twist that around, and opposite it we have blue, or otherwise we have blue green, which this sits better with me because this is sort of like a turquoise color. So let's go for a red orange color and a blue green for these two colors, which really we could use these two, they sit well together. Or we could pick something different. So let's pick something different just to change it up a little bit. Okay, so I got my Schmincke palette here. Now, to have a red orange, let's have a quick look. This would be our red orange, which is transparent orange, so the closest to this. And then the closest to blue green, I would say, is this one, Cobalt Turquoise. Now let's use those two colors here as our complementary colors, and what we're going to do then for the third tube, we're going to mix them together and see what happens, because usually you get muddy colors, but sometimes you might get something interesting as well. So let's do that. Now, the transparent orange. So I'm going to do that. On its own, it's a little bit harsh for my liking, but we're just experimenting. And then we're going to do Cobalt Turquoise right here. Okay. So, using my palette, or I could do it in here as well, or we can use the palette. So let's use the palette. I'm going to add about the same amount of both colors together and see what we get. So as predicted, you usually get muddy colors, but sometimes it could be a nice thing. So you can see this isn't really looking that great, but we could experiment a little bit and, for instance, add one color to it, more of one color, and that's what we would get. And we could add, I don't know, let's say more of the other color, and we get more of a reddish color, similar to what we had here. But look what's happening. We're having a little separation here, which didn't show beforehand. So do you see why these experiments are so useful? Now let's try adding a bit more of the orange, make it even warmer. And then what I could do is go straight in with this cobalt like that and see what happens. Whether that would be something interesting. Okay, so as you can see, this is totally fun and experimental, and it makes swatches a lot more fun. It makes swatches just kind of makes you feel like you're actually creating some really easy art, but it's not really art, but it's not really a swatch, so somewhere in the middle. And the most important thing is you're learning through these exercises and you're having fun. So what else could we ask for when it comes to watercolor? So that is it. Like I said, one day I will make a video to share how I make these, where is it gone now, these swatches into these lovely faces here as well. Again, let me know if you would be interested to see that. And that's it. I would just go ahead, title these, wait for them to dry a bit more, and just show you nice close-ups. Okay, so I am done with titling and writing everything. So let's look at this page first. So here we have the Schmincke Glacier Green, Daniel Smith Quinacridone Deep Gold, and Schmincke Viridian. Then here we have the limited color palette. So again, the same three colors I just showed you, they can do it in sort of a different style. And then here we have the complementary color palette. So in essence, what it means is that two colors are opposite each other, which if you use them in a painting like that, they make each other pop and look really harmonious together. When you start mixing them, generally they create muddy colors, but within that, if you experiment and try to add, so if you do 50-50, generally ends up a muddy color. But even in this case, it's actually quite an interesting effect we got here, because Cobalt Turquoise tends to separate and granulate into little grooves of paper. So if you use cold pressed paper, you'll see that more sometimes than on smooth paper, which would be hot pressed. And then I just titled them Baby 1. So these two created Baby 1, Baby 2, Baby 3 and Baby 4. And obviously in these swatches we started pushing it a little bit more towards Cobalt Turquoise, then again towards transparent orange, and here even more transparent orange, and then we just dabbed in some Cobalt Turquoise. So again, a neat little way of experimenting. These particular stamps don't look neat, and that was again purely my fault. This side of the sketchbook was very difficult to stamp on, so make sure, like I said, you have a completely flat area to stamp on, and you have a good fresh stamping pad. I need to order one for myself. So that is it, and then on this page let's have a closer look at these beautiful colors. So here I don't need to write anything down because on this page I have all the information that I need and I can quickly refer to that. But here are the beautiful mixes that we got. There we go. And then here again some lovely earthy greens, and these were my favorite type of swatches and color mixes. Super experimental. I mean, really, you could just create a nice page where you just stamp the entire page with these and then just color them in and frame it. So that would look really nice. It's a bit of a contemporary art. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know how long this is. I didn't mean it to be that long, but I wanted to give you as many ideas as possible so that you could start playing with your stamp sets and enjoy them. Have a swatch joyful day. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.